Hi everybody, this is Pam with Jesus Junk Journals, and I'm going to start making some of the pieces that went in this kit, the Abundance Journal, and I'm going to attempt to tell a story while I do this because I've got some inking to do. So I thought, well, while I'm inking, I'm just going to go ahead and talk. I think if I can do two things at once, which can be difficult, but I'm going to start with these envelopes. They're nice and simple, so you just basically fold them on the fold lines. Use a folding bone to fold them nice and flat. So this journal, things, I'm kind of a rebel, so things in the news are bothering me from a Christian standpoint. I feel like things are going in a terrible direction. And we're hearing about all sorts of, there's going to be nothing for Christmas, and there's shortages, and everything's out. We've been waiting ourselves. We've been waiting for a garage door for months because they are not coming in from China or wherever they're made. And I know it's not just us because there's a housing addition up here and none of the houses have garage doors. And there's storage units being built in town and none of them have their garage doors on them. So anyway, but you know what? God is the God of more than enough. And we are in this world, but we are not of this world. And so the rules don't apply to us if we choose to walk in God's world, in God's kingdom, and go by what he says. And so, let me fold this one. So what I was going to tell you was sort of my story about how God has provided in the past when some things went crossways. I don't know about you, but there have been a couple of times in my life when things got real, I'm using the word supernatural like God is supernatural. So not in the natural, but in the spirit. And so where God showed up, so to speak. And one of these times was back in 2009 when things went haywire and everybody lost their jobs. And the place I worked, which is a social expression company, great big corporation, I'd worked there for 31 years. And I thought I'd be there till I retired. I had no plans of leaving Kansas City, and my husband had a good job, a union job. And so anyway, we were pretty well buried into our little home life. And then in 2009, the company decides to have 1,000 people laid off. And this was a company that had never laid people off. Even during the Depression, they didn't lay people off. They let people go to working. Everybody worked 4 days a week so that everybody could work during the Depression. So, I mean, they really went out of their way to help people. And so, okay, I'm going to get my ink and ink this up real quick. So anyway, so we know that there's going to be layoffs, and they'd had a few already because things, the industry itself was weak. And so we knew this was coming. And, you do the kind of thing where there were, I think, 15 people in my job description, maybe, I'm guessing 15, 16, something like that. And so, you start to look at your other coworkers and you think, well, if they're going to lay off, 2 or 3 of us, who is it going to be? And that kind of thing. And I talked to my direct supervisor and she said, oh, don't worry, you're fine. And anyway, but they told us that we'd find out with an email. The next morning, whoever was going to be laid off would get an email and it would say, come to the 3rd floor or whatever. So the next morning I come to work, I open my email and there it is. And I was in shock. I just sat there. It was like somebody had hit me in the head with a mallet. I was just shocked. And my manager came in and she didn't know anything about it. She was shocked. And so what had happened was they had decided that since they had to lay people off, the vice president in charge had decided he would just eliminate our whole job description. So our whole unit of people lost their jobs. So let me back up. So let me just say this. I believe God is a God of blessing, a God of more than enough. We believe in tithing, 10% and above. And we didn't always do that. When we got married, we didn't tithe. We had bills that we felt like we couldn't tithe, which I know is no excuse. Anyway, we worked ourselves up finally till we were able to tithe. And things just turned around. Things really started to work out for us when we were able to tithe. Like financially, things were pretty smooth. And so anyway, so here we are. Well, so I'm believing God's a God to bless us and so on and so forth. And so I had prayed for different things over the years. One of the things was I was fascinated with the year of Jubilee in the Old Testament, because on the 50th year, the Jews don't work and all the debts are canceled. They get all their property back that they had to sell or, rent or give up. Everybody gets back what they lost and they don't work. And it's basically like a year-long rest and party. And I thought, wow, why don't we do that? And I asked God, I said, God, I would like to have a year of Jubilee. Just kind of threw it out there, And so I also knew that in the New Testament, God says that Jesus is our Jubilee. So he is our Jubilee. He blesses us. He's given us, he's gotten us everything. So anyway, I prayed that prayer, like to have a year of Jubilee. And even when I turned 50, it kind of crossed my mind like, hey, I wonder if God will give me a year of Jubilee since I'm 50 this year. Nothing really happened special. And so this year comes. And in this year, I'm 53, by the way, when I get laid off. So, this company had a really nice, what it was a buyout. It was actually a buyout they gave to me anyway. And they gave me 2 weeks pay for every year I worked. And so because I had worked 31 years, I got 61 weeks of pay. And so 2 or 3 months into the layoff, I was looking for work, looking for a job because I wasn't old enough to retire. But it occurred to me that I had enough to pay for a year if I needed it. And so I thought, this is my year of Jubilee I asked for. And I got so excited. And I actually had a guy, the vice president that had laid me off had felt bad. And so he had been trying to work with me and mentor me and get my portfolio ready for another job. And I don't think he was necessarily a Christian. And so I got so excited at the idea that this was my year of Jubilee. So I go and I tell him, I think this is, and he just was like, okay, good for you. You're crazy. And that was kind of the end of him mentoring me. I didn't hear from him anymore after that. And I don't know if he thought that I was just going to take the year off and not try to find a job or what he thought, but I was looking. I needed a job. I knew I needed a job. And so on the one hand, I was kind of scared and nervous, but on the other hand, I knew God had this. I knew it was going to be okay. But still. So another thing I had prayed was I had prayed that we would move out of our house and to another house because it just wasn't suited to us, but we didn't know what we wanted. My husband wanted one kind of house and I wanted another. And I'm like, oh dear, how's this ever going to work out? We've been in this house for 20 years. We've accumulated all this junk. Help me, God. Help us get out of here. And that had just kind of been a prayer I'd had ongoing. Now here's another prayer. Here's another prayer I had. God had given me, I had worked at this company, but I'd also done part-time work selling like party plan type stuff. Like, how people sell Tupperware and various things and they have parties in their homes to sell it. Well, I had done crystal and I had done jewelry and I had done something similar to Pampered Chef, but it was a different company. And I had won over those different times 2 different trips to Hawaii. And everything was paid, everything. It was just wonderful. And so I had asked the Lord for a free trip. I said, Lord, you've done it for me twice. I just want to ask you if I could have a free trip somewhere. And now this was all over, several years' time that I prayed these prayers. It wasn't like I prayed them every night, together and kept asking God for things. But anyway. Okay, so I get laid off. And I realized that I have this over a year's pay, 62 weeks pay. So, oh, by the way, I moved to these. So get these 2 pages, and I'm going to cut them apart and glue them together. These are the backs and fronts. If you want to do it that way, you can also, use them separately if you want more cards. But I'm going to glue mine together. And so, so during this year, my friend wins a free trip out to Hollywood to go to be on this talk show, some kind of daytime talk show. I can't even remember now who it was that was hosting it. It was a show that went off the air like right after that. Anyway, she won this trip and she was able to take 3 friends with her out there. So she invited me to go. So we went on a free trip to Hollywood, stayed in a nice hotel, watched the show, sat in the studio audience, all that kind of stuff. Walked on Rodeo Drive, and it was just, they picked us up in a limousine, took us everywhere in limousines. The Bonnie Franklin show is what it was. And it was sponsored by Bush's Beans. That was the contest that she won. Anyway, so I did that. That was awesome. And so, so time was going on, and I'm looking for work. And I thought to myself, I bet I don't get a job for at least a year, because I'd asked for a year of Jubilee. So I got the layoff notice or the buyout notice in October. And so I really kind of in the back of my mind thought, I bet nothing happens until October of 2010. So I kept getting, I get these random calls from all over the country. And I said, Lord, I'll go wherever you want me to go. And in fact, one morning I was praying that, and I said it again to him, I'll go anywhere you want me to go. And the phone rang, and it was somebody that wanted me to go to New York City for an interview. And I was shocked. And inside I'm just like, really, God? New York City? And I'm thinking to myself, we would have to live in a cardboard box if we moved to New York City. But anyway, so I felt like God was laughing, like, God has a sense of humor. So when I said that, I think he was just kind of teasing me, like, okay, how about this? So, let's see. I'm going to where's my, here's looking for my Barely glue. I put it away. That's why I can't find it. Okay, and I think these are all, there's a couple that are, these are not all the same size. So I have 2 that are taller, and so I'm going to find the 2 cards that are taller that correspond. Hopefully. And I think the rest of them are all about the same size. Well, actually they're not. All right. Just be aware, they're not all the same. Yeah, those 2 line up. Yeah. So there's 2 that are bigger than the others. Okay. So sure enough, in October, I get a call about a job. And it's in Indiana. And so it happened really fast. I went for the job interview, got the job, and I thought, and wait, so let me back up. So I had, that last year when I got laid off, I had Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's all off. And it was awesome. It was so cool. And I thought, I love having the holidays off, Lord. Is there any way that maybe instead of a year of Jubilee, I could have an extended year of Jubilee next year and get the holidays off again? I know, I asked for a lot. Well, so the job comes in October, and I'm like, well, okay, that's great. I need a job, so fine, I don't need the holidays off. I need a job. Well, it was a subsidiary of the company that laid me off, and they were in Indiana. And so because it was a subsidiary of my parent company, they couldn't take me until my buyout period was over. And that meant with that 62 weeks, it took me into the beginning of January. And so I got off Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year again. So that was awesome. So we're working on our house. We had an old 2-story house, and we were working on it to sell it and get it ready. And so we put it on the market, and back in 2009 and 10, things were not selling at all. So we put the house on the market, and it sold, I think it was 14 days, and the house was sold. And so that was awesome. So anyway, so I went up there, and so I was up there. We bought a house, and you know, we had the money from the buyout to help pay for everything, the move and all that good stuff, and we had family members to help us move and all that. So we get up there and we buy a house, and now I'm going to line these up, make sure I got, okay, there's one that's smaller, and I'm going to take that because there's one that's smaller on here too. And it's this one. Actually, there's two. Sorry about that. There's the other small one. Okay, so let me make sure these line up. Yep. So we go to Indiana. My husband quits his job to follow me because he figured he could find a job up there, you know, doing what he does. And so we go. Well, he did not find a job, and we really didn't fit up there. We didn't find a church we liked. We didn't make friends, really, you know. It never felt right. And I'm real proactive. Like, I'm all about jumping in and doing things immediately. We had boxes in the basement, and every time I'd start to unpack, I'd think, no, I don't think so. And so I didn't say anything to my husband because I thought, I don't want to get him stressed out, but I just don't feel like this was, I don't know, the thing. So one day, finally, I asked him, I said, do you think this is where we're supposed to be? And he goes, nope. Didn't even hesitate. I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. So anyway, so let me just say that I like Kenneth Copeland Ministries a lot, and all the people that are associated with him. And anyway, he sends CDs out about things. He has a word for each year that the Lord has given him. And so that was, by that point, I'd been there a year and a half. It was 2012 or a year. And in 2012, he sent out a set of CDs on that year. And he goes, 2012 is going to be a year of suddenlies and surprises. And I was listening to it on the way to work, and I'm thinking, oh, that's awesome, Lord. I would love some suddenlies and surprises. And about 3 or 4 days later, somebody from the home office shows up. We have a big employee meeting, and they let us know that they're going to shut down the company up there, take it back to Kansas City, and, oh, by the way, they don't really need any of us because they have all these people in Kansas City that's been laid off that are looking for work. So here I am. I am in Indiana, no family, no friends, no big buyout this time. It was very stressful, and yet I knew that God wouldn't let us down. But it was a struggle. I'm not going to lie. It was kind of a thing. And this one day, I was just like, God, I don't want to get Johnny stressed out, my husband. I said, but I need a word from you. I need a word to know that you're with me and everything's going to be okay. And I didn't say anything to him, but I went to work, and I came home at lunch, and Johnny came out on the porch, and he said, I called Andrew Womack's ministry. They have a hotline, prayer hotline. And he said, I've talked to the lady, and she said, I have a word for your wife. And it is, and I should have had it written down, Jeremiah 33. Oh, I'm not going to be able to quote it. Isn't that terrible? I'm telling you a story, and I should have had it at hand. But anyway, so he tells me this quote, and what it did for me was, because I had secretly in my prayers asked God, I need a word. And that same day, Johnny comes up and says, I've got a word for you from this, you know. It was just a touch from God letting me know. It didn't even matter what the scripture was. I mean, it could have been Jesus wept. And I would have felt great because, you know, like, okay, God. So that was encouraging. Well, so my husband says, well, we need to put the house on the market. I'm like, okay. Now, we had a few months before they were going to close us down. So we were going to keep working, and I was going to start looking for a job and so on and so forth. And so he says, we need to put the house on the market. So we put the house on the market, and this time it sold in like, I don't know, 10 days. And it was funny because it was these people who had tried to buy it before and then backed out on it when it was for sale when we bought it. And so they were sorry they didn't get it the first time. So when they saw it was back on the market, they came and bought it. So anyway, but I'm like, okay, Lord, well, how are we going to move? How are we going to do this? How's this going to happen? So where are we going to go? And so a friend of mine at a company down here in Arkansas, it was another subsidiary of the same company we had both worked at in Kansas City. They have a subsidiary down here, and she goes, they're hiring. So why don't you, apply? And so I did all that, and, so cut to the chase. I get the job. And because it was a subsidiary, there was like this little fine print on the buyout or layoff or whatever up there in Indiana. And they said, if you find a job with a company, one of the other subsidiaries, we will pay for your move. And so because this was a subsidiary, they completely paid to come and pack all of our things, haul them from Indiana to Arkansas, and it was all taken care of. And now I will say this. The job that I got was a pay cut. And the job that I got in Indiana was a pay cut. And I I got promoted and got raises during these times, but I never did actually get back to the salary that I was making in Kansas City. But here's the thing about it, and this is what's so cool. God taught me a lesson that you don't have to have more money. He can take care of things so that you don't need more money. And the cost of living down here was better. And we ended up with a house that, it was funny because when I was in Indiana, my husband stayed in Kansas City and worked for an extra 6 months while we got the house ready to sell before we listed it. And I rented an apartment and worked up there. And so I was up there by myself, so I didn't have a lot of things to do. Well, I went over and was looking at these new houses they were building. And they were like show homes with all the bells and whistles. And so I'd take Johnny over there and say, come look at these houses. They're so cool. And they've got all these features that I really love. And oh, look, they've got these hand-scraped floors. And oh, look, they've got these cool windows. And I know this is weird, but I used to watch HGTV a lot in Kansas City. And so when they came out, they had commercials on there. And they were talking about James Hardie concrete fiberboard siding. And I thought it was so cool because it was guaranteed for 50 years and you didn't have to do anything and all this stuff. And so I know this is a crazy joke, but I used to joke with Johnny. I'm like, Johnny, I want some James Hardie concrete fiberboard siding on our house. And he was like, what? And it was just, I just thought it was anyway, it was funny to me. So anyway, so we come to Arkansas. And actually, it was when I was being interviewed. I lined up 5 houses to look at. One of them was just an outrageous house. It was more than what we could have expected to have. But it was gorgeous, and it really stood out. And so I just wanted to look at it. So we pulled up, and Johnny goes, oh, no. This is way too much of a house for us. And so the realtor walks up, and she goes, oh, this has got James Hardie siding on it. That's why I mentioned it earlier. And it was like, I looked at Johnny, I'm like, ooh, this is a sign. So we go in, it had hand-scraped floors. It had the same windows as the houses in Indiana. It had the open floor plan. It had everything that I had wanted in those houses in Indiana. But it was a great big house, bigger than we need, because there's just 2 of us. Johnny was like, no, this is too much house. But anyway, then we look out in the backyard. There's a gigantic swimming pool, in-ground swimming pool. Like, Johnny's like, okay, nope, that's not who we are. We're not those people. So we ran off. I'm all right, sorry for wasting your time. I said to the realtor, okay, let's go look at the other ones. And we had prayed that we would really know which one to buy. Like, God, please make it clear which house to buy. And none of them, there was nothing when we looked at them. It was like, nope, nope, nope. So I'm not going to go all through all the carrying on, but we ended up with the house with the swimming pool. So even though I took a pay cut and so on and so forth, and Johnny had quit his good paying job and took a job that made less, we lived better than we lived in Kansas City by far. God just kept blessing us, and like people kept trying to take us down, and we just kept coming up. And so is the story over? No, the story is not over. So I'm at this company, I get promoted, I get another promotion, and then, we have a layoff. And I was the last art director hired, and so they decided to lay an art director off, and it was going to be me. I was laid off again. This was 2015, and they kept me on for a few months to help with another part of the company where there was a need, but I got laid off. Now, I wasn't old enough to retire yet, and you know, there's all these rules and regulations about getting into your retirement fund and so on. So, I mean, we were kind of like, what are we going to do? What should we do? And a friend died. Now, she went to heaven. So, I mean, she was blessed, you could say. But she left us a large amount of money. And unexpectedly just took care of it in exactly the right time that we needed it. It filled the gap for income until I was old enough to be able to take money out of my retirement. And so it's just been miraculous and awesome to see how God takes care over and above, not just your basic needs, but blesses you, gives you your heart's desire. And so, you know, and one of the other things we did when we were up in Indiana, it was scary. You know, like I said, I was pretty stressed out. There were nights when I couldn't sleep. I'm not going to say I was a faith queen. I had struggles. But one of the things I thought, Satan, you are not going to win this battle. You are not winning this. And so one of the things we decided to do is we took $500 out of our savings account, and we went up to the Kmart, and we handed it out to people that we just prayed about who to give it to. We handed it out in $50 increments to 10 people. And we just thought, we're going to plant this seed. So back to the journal. This journal talks about seed time and harvest. And the Bible says seed time and harvest, God works with seed time and harvest, and he will clear up until the end. So you plant seed, you're going to get a harvest. So we decided to poke our finger in Satan's eye and plant some seed, even though it looked like we had no business handing $500 out. And boy, did we get blessed. So anyway, that's my story, one of my stories about how God took care of us. And I'm still not done inking. So I'm pretty passionate about believing God is going to take care of us. And I picked scriptures out, hopefully that will speak to that. Something else I did during that year of Jubilee is I got to go to Europe. I had never been to Europe. I have a friend that lives there, and she invited me, but you know, I was working, couldn't go. Because if you're going to go, you want to spend a couple of 3 weeks. I do. And so I got to go over there and spend 3 weeks with her in her house in Belgium, and go to Italy and go to Paris and all that. So it was turned out to be quite the blessing. Okay. All right, so we've got our envelopes inked, and I'm just going to glue them shut. So however you want those to overlap. I'm going to put the light side over the dark side on this one. And then put the glue here. This is the coin envelope, sorry. And this could go either way. I think that's the way I like it the best. So just a little bit of glue here and here. Oh, and I do want to ink that flap on the inside there. Okay. All right. Cool. All right, so we've got those, and we've got all these cards done. And I think, let's see. Is there something else I can do? I actually have these 5 tags, and they also are different sizes. These 2 that are at the bottom of the page go to the 2 on the other side. Does that make sense? Like they correspond. They're narrower, so they need to go with each other. So, you know, I'll say too that word from Kenneth Copeland, he said some other things. He said there were several points that just corresponded to what I was going through. It was really pretty bad up in Indiana. The management, the people, it was awful, and they kind of treated us pretty badly. There was a lot of lying and deception and weirdness and unhealthy culture. As soon as I walked in the place, it was just like, oh my gosh. And so one of the things he said was, one day very soon you will look around and wonder where your enemies have gone to. And that is exactly how it felt. When I got down to Arkansas, it all happened so quickly. I mean, they announced the layoff, I think it was like in April. And I started work at this company down here in July. Oh, and that was the other thing. I asked the Lord to not have to store our furniture, that we could just sell our house and move directly into our new house. And we sold our house. They loaded everything up. And we took possession of this house, and the next day the truck showed up with all of our furniture, and we were able to move it without storing it or any weirdness. Just so many I can't even, I mean, there were so many blessings I've forgotten. I've forgotten them all. But what would have been, what seemed like the worst time was really one of the best times of my life. Especially when you look back and see the hand of God, it's just like, wow, so worth it. So worth any kind of trial or tribulation you think you're going through when you see that God's in it. Okay, this one lines up with this one. I didn't get that quite lined up right, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to trim it down. On both sides. And no one will ever know, especially after I ink it. Okay, there's those 2. Okay, let's see. I started cutting these out, but I left them together so I could tell which card was which. So I could match them up with the backs of them. These are the same kind of deal. If you want to glue these together and make 5 tags, you can, which is what I'm going to do. Or you could just keep them separate and have 10 tags. So your choice. I hope you like these files I sourced. I've got some fine art prints that I used, and some really beautiful drawings of fruits, and I think they're beautiful anyway. I love that. I love those grapes. These botanical drawings are just, I think some of them are just gorgeous. And I usually use the flowers. I've never had a need to use the fruit and vegetables, but this just seemed to be a good way to communicate the bounty of God. You know, it's kind of like Thanksgiving and, you know, just how he meets our needs. Come on now, line up. So there's Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. And I felt like I really lived that out for a while. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow of turning. Commit your way to the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. Yes. But without faith it is impossible to please him, for he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. He who did not spare his own son, but delivered him over for us all, how will he not also with him freely give us all things? So those are the 5 tags. I'm going to go ahead and ink those. Okay, so those are done on that side. Okay, I guess I want to do them with vintage photo on this side too. These kind of look like the green might be pretty with them, but they might not. Maybe they don't need green. They've already got some green on them. All right, now I do have shabby shutters. Okay, so we get just a little bit of green, and I wanted to do it on this one too. Okay. All right. That is it for now. We'll come back later and do some more stuff to these tags, but thanks for watching the video. I hope you liked it. I hope you liked my long story. And so if you liked it, click the like button and think about subscribing, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.